Karina Castro was murdered in the street in front of her house last week on September 8th at about 11:50 a.m. Her estranged boyfriend, Rafa Solano, has been arrested for the murder. Hey everybody, welcome to the True Crime Squad. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey Katie,
Hello.
how's it going?
Well, it's going okay. um, Antibiotics
Good.
has kind of ruined my life. So I've
Oh,
been
thanks.
mostly down today, planning things that I want to make and do, but not
Mm,
making and doing anything. Well, I've worked a lot, but
gotcha.
you know. However, Scott made pho for dinner because I wasn't
Ooh,
feeling good, and it was awesome. So there's that.
nice, nice. Well, and just as we were getting ready to record, I could hear Katie's puppy barking, and she said, "Bruno, go bark somewhere else." So that was funny. And he seems
uh,
to have done just that, actually, because we're not
he
hearing
really
him now.
did. Here's what happens. I come in my office to record, and I shut the door, and
Mhm.
our corgi Basset is really stuck to me.
Mhm.
So she wants to come. So
Of
if
course.
I don't let her come in with me, she lays in front of the door, and then the puppies pester the hell out of her to play with them. And then there's all this barking and, snarling and situation going on right outside the door,
Mhm.
which would make you think, why don't you just let her come in with you? And why indeed? Except for that if she's too far behind me and I wait for her to come in, then they come in too. And then I have another rodeo trying to make them leave. So can you see how I have a problem?
I can. Yes, yes, I can. I actually have watched you try to wrangle this crew on leashes several
Oh, wait.
times this summer
Yeah.
camp, and
And it's a
I
whole
gotta tell
thing.
you all, it's high quality entertainment.
Hmm. It is a whole thing. So that's why. That's why it's
Yeah.
been going
I
well
watched Katie's dogs sort of do their own version of the maypole with their leashes this weekend, and before
around
you knew it,
me.
they were
Yeah.
all just sort of nubbed to each other. It was pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. They're something.
They are something, yes.
It's a good
Well,
thing they're cute, per always.
it is. This is our Tuesday episode, and I believe
Yes.
we're kicking it off, Katie, with a little bit of DNA for the win.
Yes. All right. So this lovely girl is Krystal Belsanowicz. And Krystal was murdered in Utah a long time ago, and her case was solved not too long ago.
Oh,
And I had never heard of her murder before. So I felt like
mhm,
this was a really interesting case for us because we know these places.
sure.
So she went missing from Salt Lake City.
Mm,
She lived with her boyfriend, and his name was Chris. And she was 17, and she was actually from Spokane. She'd been living in Utah for like maybe 5 months or so.
mm,
And she was dating, yes, this boy called Chris and lived with him.
mhm,
The articles I have read said she either was a prostitute or it was suspected she was into prostitution. I'm going to tell you that because this was Utah in the 80s, I'm going to hold this in really low regard because if
yeah,
you weren't in, you were out, if you know what I mean, to the local
mhm.
religion. And so if she wasn't, your little, Molly Mormon churchgoer, she probably was seen as a lady of the night. I mean, I know that seems dramatic, but I'm not wrong. That's
You're
kind of
not. No, no. Well, she was
how it
living with
was.
her boyfriend. That was enough
Hmm.
to get saddled with
Right.
some very rude tags.
Yeah. Now, not that I give a shit if she was a prostitute or not. That's fine. I mean, I no judgment there. But that
It's
that
just in
label
that
just stuck
community.
hard with me. Yeah, seems pretty typical. But at any rate, she was impersonating her half sister. So she
Oh,
was going by her half sister Tracy's name at the time.
oh.
Caused some real confusion because when she told Chris she was going out for food one night and she never came back. And
Oh.
he finally went out and searched up and down the street, went to the store that she said she was going to. Nobody had seen her. And the next day, some ranchers called the police and said that there was a deceased body of a female on the banks of the Provo River.
Mm.
And so they went out there and discovered a young woman who had been beat to death with a rock.
Oh, God.
And she was naked. Her body was completely battered. Her shoulders and head were bleeding profusely. And the blows were so forceful that you could not make out a face. She was completely unrecognizable.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a really amazingly good job of gathering up forensics. They took the rocks
Oh,
and
wow.
they got some matter out from under her fingernails, and it's stuff they have hung on to all these years. But when they finally, Chris had reported her missing, and so poor Chris was just trying to, do the right things, and
Right.
he identified her body
Mm-hmm.
as Stacy.
Oh.
So then the police make contact with Stacy's family in Spokane and discover that Stacy is alive and well. But Krystal has moved to Salt Lake. So it was actually Krystal.
Oh, boy.
Um, she had two really distinctive tattoos, and that's how they ended up, you know, being able to make the decipher that. But then poor Chris was a suspect because he identified her incorrectly.
Oh,
Chris didn't do shit.
right.
Neither did the cab driver that they really looked hard at. Also, wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they for a long time searched for her. What they say they did, I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing it, except for that the same officer that was on the case in the first place actually was able to solve it. So I'm going to give him some
Oh.
props. But in 2008, they sent the DNA in for more examination. The tech had started catching up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they detected a foreign DNA sample on the rocks, but it didn't match any pre-existing ones in the database. So
Mm.
they kept going. In 2013, there was a new system, and it's a DNA vacuum that can lift touch DNA from
Mm-hmm.
items. So they used this vacuum to get touch DNA off of the rocks, and they got actual workable DNA.
Wow.
So the DNA was a match to a man named Joseph Michael Simpson, who was
Mm-hmm.
already in CODIS. So, of course, they can't arrest on that. They have to be sure, right? So
Right.
they find him in Florida and they put him under surveillance and they watch him toss a cigarette and take it
How many times? How many times?
how many times? They get a hold of that, and indeed, it is Joseph. When Joseph murdered Krystal, he was on parole for an unrelated murder.
Oh, no.
hmm In court, he pleaded not guilty, but he was found guilty of aggravated murder. So he was sentenced to life in prison. He is at present in the Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison, Utah.
Oh, wow.
This is him.
Wow.
Yep. So for once, a perp that's still alive that actually gets
Right.
prosecuted. We don't see that
Always
very
good.
often. Yeah. But I'm so grateful for Krystal and for her family and for Stacy for that matter that they were able to get some peace and actually find out who did this to her.
Wow.
I
Well,
mean, it sounds like he was just your run of the mill sex offender and murderer.
right? It's sad to say that, but it's actually true.
hmm
There are way more of them out there than I think any of us want to admit.
I think so too. And again, like this, there didn't seem to be any other motive than this is what he does. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. So there you have it. So DNA for the win.
Yeah.
Interesting. The DNA vac.
Mm-hmm.
That's a piece of tech I hadn't heard about before, and it's been around since 2013. So where have I
Well,
been? But
all of the work with touch DNA is pretty new
really new,
and
really exciting.
really, yeah. really helpful
Mm-hmm.
because we just don't realize we literally are shedding our DNA everywhere we go, everything we do,
Mm-hmm.
everything we touch or breathe on, even sometimes,
Uh-huh.
is
Has
enough.
a piece of us. Yep.
Yep.
That's kind of unsettling, but okay.
It is. It's weird because like none of it's visible, you know, but it is happening.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting thought.
It is. A note to self, I guess, if you're a criminal, don't be throwing those cigarette butts wherever you go, because that just might be your downfall. Or do.
That
Maybe do, actually. But
that is so often how police get the corroborating DNA. It's just
yeah,
funny.
for sure. So with that, I'm going to kick the mic back over to you to learn all about Karina Castro.
Yes. So I'm going to just preface this with a bit of a warning. This is a very graphic murder. And I'm not going to go into huge detail of description, but it's a very graphic murder. So please just be aware if you are too sensitive for something like that, feel free to scroll on. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought I'd let you know. So Karina Castro was murdered last week on September 8th of 2022. She was murdered about 11:50 a.m. This was in the Bay Area in California. She was out in front of her house at the time, and her ex-boyfriend, who there'd been a history of domestic violence, there was a protection order against him. He came to her house. He opened the trunk of his car and pulled out a sword of some sort,
Oh, dear God.
and he beheaded her in the middle of the street, right in front of her house.
Oh.
Yeah, it was absolutely shocking to everybody in the community, first responders. This has been a really traumatic event. Also, she had very young children who were in the house at the time.
Oh,
They
no.
fortunately did not witness the murder, but they were present right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, thank God they were safe.
yeah.
Oh.
So, according to family, there'd been quite a bit of domestic violence in this situation, and they had all been, doing the thing that families all do and trying to get her to get away from this guy. And she was trying. She had a protection order against him.
Mm-hmm.
She had ended her relationship with him. She was trying to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, as does happen, usually it's when, a person who is being abused does try to make that separation in a relationship that is the most dangerous time for them.
Mm-hmm.
Her ex-boyfriend, Rafa Solano, he left the scene of the murder briefly, and then he returned just in time for the police and the ambulance and everyone to show up. So they arrested him right there. He has a history of some pretty bad mental health problems, some pretty
Mm-hmm.
significant mental health problems. And so he is in jail. They are seeking a psychiatric evaluation of
Mm-hmm.
him to determine whether he can stand trial for her murder,
Mm-hmm.
whether he needs some hospitalization
Is he the father of her
beforehand.
children?
I don't think so.
Okay, sorry, carry on.
Oh,
It's
I was
just
trying to
I was just wondering.
remember. Her kids are little. I was trying to remember how old they are. Sorry. Let me peruse one of my articles here. 7 and 1.
Mm,
So one of the things that's happened that's been very difficult for her family
mhm.
is that her children were immediately put into CPS custody,
Oh.
and her dog and 2 cats were immediately also taken to a shelter. And
Oh.
so her family are now trying to get the children and the pets out of the foster systems that they are both in,
Oh my
and
God.
with their family. It all happened
Sure.
with I think that they just because this was so graphic, it was just like, "Get the
Mhm.
kids out of here and away from this situation as quickly
Mhm.
as possible," because they're, you know, this is way more than they could ever process.
Sure.
Um, but now her family, her dad in particular, he is just absolutely heartbroken. He's tried to intervene in this situation, and we all
Sure.
know how that goes with a family member. It's not always appreciated, and
Yeah.
he's basically come out and said, never stop trying, never stop fighting for the safety of your loved ones, because you just never know.
Mhm.
And her community is absolutely heartbroken. There have been
Mm,
vigils for her, and there's a GoFundMe for them that's already raised $50,000 to
good.
help support the family and help take care of the kids. And
Mhm.
it's just an absolutely shocking, really
Mhm.
terrifying um, murder.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the things that I read that I think makes quite a bit of sense is that the way that this murder happened definitely points to his mental instability,
Yeah.
that he killed her in this way in the middle of the street,
For sure.
in the middle of the day.
Right.
There
Didn't
was no attempt to conceal.
didn't give a shit. Yeah.
No, no. And that does indicate, that he may have been psychotic
Mhm.
at the time, or whatever.
Mhm.
But it is whenever these domestic violence related murders, and they're all the time, every single day happening, it's just another reminder of how important it is for all of us to be aware and be
Mhm.
vigilant of family members and family member situations and safety situations. Because
Mhm.
as a social worker, I helped women, primarily women, sometimes men, get civil protection orders in domestic violence situations. I got to be a real pro at helping them write them and getting them granted by judges. But the bottom
Yeah.
line is, it's just a piece of paper,
Yep.
and it doesn't stop somebody in a situation
No.
like this.
Nope. Well, that is profoundly sad.
Yeah. It's one reason why shelters are really important,
Yeah.
is to get somebody away in a place
Mhm.
where they wouldn't be known, where they were could be found. Because
Mhm.
when someone is this unstable, you don't know what they
Right.
might do.
No.
And this is it's just a horrific loss for her family, for her children,
Mhm.
and such a shocker, um,
Mhm.
for the whole community,
Yeah.
for people who saw what happened, who, you know, I mean, this all just happened in the middle of the street in a neighborhood. It's just,
Mhm.
I can't imagine how many people actually saw what happened.
Oh, yeah. For
So
sure.
here is a photo. This is Karina, and her ex-boyfriend. He has kind of a
Slash
long
murderer.
slash
Yeah.
murderer. He has a long name, but he apparently goes by Rafa Solano. He actually has four names, but
Oh,
Rafa Solano is what he normally goes by. But here they are side by side. And I don't know. This one just really struck me. And I can't imagine
yeah.
living in a neighborhood where this happened.
No.
So at least he is in police custody,
Mhm.
charged. And, if he can't stand trial right now, they'll hospitalize him. You know, at
Spiff him
least her,
up. Yep.
at
Get
least
him
her
back to court.
children are safe from him
Yeah.
at this point.
I in cases like this, sometimes I think it's an absolute miracle that the kids are safe. I was thinking about Bass
Right.
Webb. Bass
Yes.
Webb, of course, we've covered in the past, and he beheaded his ex-girlfriend on her couch while her
Right.
children slept nearby.
Yeah.
It's a miracle those kids were safe, and in this case too, it's just that it's obvious that they had a tunnel vision to one person and one person only.
Yeah. Yeah. It is rather amazing that they, in both of these cases, they didn't
Mhm.
go and
Yeah.
harm the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wow.
So we'll keep an eye on this case, and as he makes his way through the legal system, we'll keep an eye on it. I think it's important for us to see how this case is handled because of
Mhm.
his mental health history and because of the circumstances surrounding this murder. You know, a pretty unhinged person obviously has committed this.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on it and keep you updated. I'm always curious about these kinds of things because this is where we can start seeing real holes in our system.
Yeah.
I didn't check to see what California's insanity defense is and what they allow and how that's all going to go, but I will, so that when we update this, I'll be able to tell you some things like that,
Yeah.
because this is one of those areas we have to be really aware of. Like in Idaho, we don't have an insanity defense, which means that if someone is incompetent to stand trial, they will just stay in a psychiatric hospital until they are.
Mhm.
And if they never are, they might stay a very long time in a psychiatric hospital. But
Yes.
not every state does it the same way. So we'll
Yeah.
keep an eye on this case and see how he travels through the system.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Katie, I'm going to kick the mic back to you for a crime update.
Yes. There are those who have been quite critical of Gen Z,
True.
and I personally disagree and have felt like Gen Z will wow us beyond our greatest expectations. That's my belief.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're already doing it. And let me tell you about one of those times.
Mm.
Because there are some boys in Rhode Island that are absolute heroes right now.
Oh.
There was a teacher at their middle school who the kids had labeled as a creep and a pedo.
Mm.
And he was creepy towards the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls and their parents had talked to the administration until they were blue in the face about this guy. And here he was. He even bragged one time in a class that he'd had so many complaints, but had never actually gotten in trouble. Just
Jeez.
one of these typical, we all had teachers like this. We all
Yes.
did. Well, the boys had had enough of the way he was talking to the girls. He would do
Mm.
things like turn on a song and point at a girl and tell her she had to stand up and dance,
Oh.
and make icky comments about girls' clothes. And,
Mm.
we all know. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the boys had had enough. And so they decided that since admin wasn't listening to them or to the
Mm-hmm.
girls and their parents, that they were just going to start keeping track. So one of these little geniuses, bear in mind, these kids are in middle school. They're right about eighth grade, seventh, eighth grade.
Mm-hmm.
They set up a Discord
Oh.
and they invite any other boys that are in this teacher's class or classes to participate if they want to. And
Mm-hmm.
they start keeping notes in real time of things that he said, things that he did, when, what class it was, what person it was, and they just keep a running deal. The
Mm-hmm.
next year, that this happened in 2021.
Okay.
When those kids moved on from that class, they turned it over to the kids below them, and they kept their notes going in 2022.
Oh, wow.
Well, in April of 2022, this teacher was escorted from the school by admin because he was also a coach.
Oh, no.
Because of course he was, of girls.
Oh,
Because of
boy.
course he freaking was. And one of the families was accusing him of stalking their middle school age daughter and being inappropriate with her.
Oh.
And the school, according to this family, did their damnedest to just brush them off. And basically they said, you either do something or we're taking all of this to the press.
Mm-hmm.
So he has been on administrative leave ever since. Well, one of the boys came home from school and was telling his mom about the Discord. And
Sure.
she went, well, that needs to go into the hands of the powers that be.
Yeah.
So the Discord was turned over to the school as well as to uh, the prosecutor.
Good.
And it's being used now as potentially a piece of evidence.
Good.
Yeah.
That's very smart.
Hmm. This was entirely up to them. These boys. They said they were tired of seeing girls be humiliated in his class and be degraded and being treated like that. They were sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something?
That is. That is.
The parents that finally got him removed from the school, told the paper that they were treated with deliberate indifference by the school. Boy,
Oh,
doesn't that
wow.
sound familiar?
Yeah, it surely does.
Yeah. So now the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the State Education Department, and a lawyer conducting internal investigations for the school all have the Discord.
Good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just blown away and completely in awe of these kids. And what a great way to use tech to do something good. So
Yeah.
no word. Because these are all minors and because the teacher has yet to be charged with anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no there are no names attached to this story, as it should be at this point.
Sure.
So I can't tell you what school it was. All I know is it happened in Rhode Island, and good job.
Yeah. Wow. It's pretty sad, though, when adults aren't listening to
Hmm.
this degree
Yep.
that kids would have to go to this level and
Hmm.
keep track of things for 2 years
Hmm.
before
Yep.
anything happens.
Deliberate indifference.
Yep.
Boy,
Boy,
that sounds familiar.
that really does sound familiar. Well, good for those kids.
Yeah.
And a great idea for anyone else who's seeing a problem like this.
Hmm.
Like, hey, get a Discord server and invite everyone you know involved.
Yeah.
Keep a running tally. That's really smart. Really, really
Hmm.
smart.
Yeah. Love it.
Me too. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
This is our Tuesday episode, which means we'll be back tomorrow with another episode and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Mountain for our Wednesday night case updates, which there's all kinds of stuff going on right now.
Ooh,
With Colby Ryan,
the
with
Fletcher case.
the Fletcher case, the George Wagner trial. There's a
Mm.
lot going on right now. So we're going to have lots to share with you in our live update. So you don't want to miss that. So be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment. Always helps us to grow. And don't forget to check us out over on Patreon. On Patreon, we offer extra episodes every month for our patrons. We also do our beloved psychic hour over there for anyone who is a patron, or if you want to join our YouTube channel, you will also get the psychic hour as well as a true crime cold read party that we do once a month. So we
Hmm.
have lots of ways to interact with us, and there are lots of ways to support us if you appreciate our work. Definitely joining the Patreon or the YouTube channel just helps keep us doing what we're doing. So
Hmm.
we appreciate that from you. But if you didn't know that those were more opportunities to get more content from us, then now you know.
Yep.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thanks for being here.
Take care.